MPN's Power Player is sponsored by ZDMS Dealer Management System, the heart of technology in your dealership and the engine that drives productivity and profitability. Schedule a demo today at zdms.com.
Hey everybody, Evan Laux here for Motorcycle and Powersports News. As you can see, we're back in the studio for another Power Players interview. And today we're joined with Jim Strang of Signalmatic. They're based in Colorado, and it's a really cool device that you put on the bottom of your motorcycle, and it actually triggers stoplights so you don't have to wait super long at that red light. It's probably a product you guys haven't heard about before, so Jim's here to tell us all about it. Jim, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, I appreciate you having me, for sure.
And you know, we were kind of talking off the cuff before the interview here. You really have a long, storied history in the industry and other industries before you got to this point with Signalmatic. Why don't you kind of walk us through your career history?
All right. Well, I've actually got a degree in automotive engineering, so I was working on cars. I had the contract when I lived in Florida with the post office and had some guys working for me, and we did that for about 10 years, and then I got into the CBD hemp business.
Okay.
So we sold our place down in Florida and moved out to Colorado in 2014, and I was one of the first 3 to register again and grow hemp in the United States since the 30s. And about 4 years ago, people started calling me about Signalmatic, and I decided, man, it's kind of time to bring this back. You know, we talked about how my dad started all this back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so here we are. You know, you just never know what's going to happen in life. So
right.
It's wonderful. So.
You know, we actually get that a lot from people in the power sports industry, whether it's, you know, dealership owners or they're just riders or, you know, they sell a certain product. They have experience from other industries. They kind of jump around and use all that knowledge and bring it back to the power sports industry. So Jim, before we get to your product, the Signalmatic here, first, you know, for our audience, we should talk a little bit about modern traffic lights and how they sense cars and how that's different from motorcycles and what the problem is there.
All right. So on the lights, they call them an inductive loop system. So if you ever pull up on the light and they haven't paved over the road yet, you'll see like a tar square cut out. Sometimes it's circles. And what that actually is like a metal detector in the ground. It's a magnetic field. So when a car comes up, it's got enough metal mass to interrupt that field, make it go the other direction, and tells the light there's something there. When you got a motorcycle, there's not enough metal mass on the bike, so when you pull up on that loop and there's no cars around, it doesn't recognize you. It's just not enough metal to interrupt that field.
Right.
So you've probably seen people out there on bikes at a light turn around and trying to get the people to pull up farther to get on that loop.
Yeah.
So you know, there's some new lights coming out because the inductive loop system, there's so much traffic nowadays. In the last 10 years, they've came out with some traffic lights, like the cameras on the lights. So if you get into busy downtown areas, that camera actually will recognize how many cars are coming. It takes like 1,000 pictures a second, and it'll let all the cars go through, you know, and then if a car comes up on the side, then it'll sit there and let the main traffic go first, and then it'll get the green light for the side road.
Right.
With the loop system, the reason they got away from that in downtown areas, in busier areas, is because if you got so much traffic now and a guy comes up on the side and trips that loop, it'll change the light right away, and then it stops the flow of traffic. And that's where the new cameras come into play, which is a better technology for high volume traffic areas.
Right.
But once you get outside the city limits and you know, outside downtown areas, everything goes back to inductive loop systems again. Mm-hmm. So it's still a big problem, and it's a wonderful thing that we've come up with to fix the problem that nobody ever has.
Right. And you know, it is a big problem. Not only, obviously, people are impatient. They don't want to sit at a light for too long.
Right.
But also, you're in a very vulnerable state as a motorcyclist. You know, everybody thinks that when you're driving down the highway at 60, that's when you're most at danger, which it is. But at the stoplight, you also, you know, have the blind spot behind you. You don't have an easy exit path of somebody to come up on you fast. So, having more control over that stoplight is probably a pretty beneficial thing for riders.
Definitely, because man, if there's not a car around, you're just going to sit there, and like a lot of the big intersections, you'll have 2 lanes going forward, then you get a separate turning lane. Well, that turning lane is a separate loop from the cars going. So if you're out there by yourself on a bike in that turning lane, you're going to sit there. And now there's like 7 states that have come up with what they call the dead red law. So what that is, if you sit there for more than, I think there's little different laws in the 7 states, but I know like Chicago area and Illinois, if you sit there for more than 2 minutes or 2 cycles of light, you can run through it.
Okay.
That's not legal in downtown Chicago. So if you're in city limits, you can't do that. But if you get outside city limits, you can actually wait for a couple cycles of light and go through. The problem with that is someone's going to get hit. It's already happened. Somebody didn't see a car coming. They run through the red light and they get hit. I've already heard a couple horror stories of guys that haven't made it that tried to run the red light and got hit doing it. So
right.
It's definitely a safety issue as well. So, but to have control of that light now is just a wonderful thing.
Definitely. Is that something that's I haven't heard of the dead red? You said
dead red law.
Dead red law.
So
it's been adopted by 7 states. Is that something that's going to continue to be adopted by more?
I'm not sure it's how far they're going to take it. I'm just not sure where that's going to go. Now I know like in Oklahoma, we've been getting orders from down there because they're actually doing the red light cameras. So a lot of these guys in states where they can run the red light and they're still getting pulled over, a lot of cops know that it's a problem for motorcycles still, so they'll usually just say, hey, be careful and let them go. But now when you get down to Oklahoma, if you run that red light, it takes a picture, you get a ticket in the mail, you can't talk to nobody. So you either got to pay it or you got to go to court. So like I said, we've been getting a lot of orders down there for a couple $100. I mean, you can solve the problem. And why you don't have to go dealing with, going to court or, paying a ticket that you don't really deserve. So
definitely. So in a second here, we'll get to the actual product, the Signalmatic. But guys, before that, we know a lot of you are in the power sports industry, whether it be an enthusiast, a professional, a lot of you own dealerships or you work at one. And you guys should really check out ZDMS. It's a dealership management solutions that can really improve the productivity and profitability of your business. Watch this video for more information.
As many of you know, taking physical inventory is something you do once, maybe twice a year, and sometimes you avoid it altogether. With large quantities of parts, accessories, chemicals, tires, and various other merchandise throughout your store, it's not a simple task to complete. There is a better solution. A solution that gives you the ability to cycle inventory counts anytime without disruption to your business. That solution? ZDMS RFID Physical Inventory. With RFID tags placed on inventory, you can cycle counts or conduct physical inventory with the RFID handheld scanner by simply pulling the trigger and walking around your dealership. RFID scanners do not require line of sight, so counters don't need to bend down under partitions, climb shelves, or position items to be visually seen to be counted in most cases. Contact your ZDMS representative to learn more about RFID physical inventory and how ZDMS is the only dealer management system in the power sports industry building the technology your dealership needs.
All right, everybody, welcome back. As we said, we're going to get into this Signalmatic now, this product right here in front of us. And Jim, a lot of people probably haven't heard of a product like this, so why don't you start by just explaining what exactly it does and how it solves the problem we were talking about earlier?
All right. Well, how a lot of these stoplights work, like we talked about, it's an inductive loop system, and when you come up on the light and you'll see a tar cut out if they haven't paid over the road, that's a magnetic field. So what Signalmatic does is we have a couple different brackets. We have one that goes under your saddlebag for the guys that don't want to see this hanging under their bike. And then we have one that hooks on like any of the bars, your foot peg bars it'll hook to. And you got a wire that goes to ground, and you got one that goes to your brake light. And when you come up on the light on that loop system and you hit your brake, it actually turns the unit on. We're actually reading that signal, and we send a signal out that interrupts the magnetic field and starts to change the light for you.
Okay.
So we've got it perfected. It's just a wonderful thing. Nobody's ever come up with this. We got rid of the last weight light in the United States in 1960, and it's been a problem ever since.
That's funny you say that, because we were talking with the other crew members right before this, and we all thought that the weight system was still something that was used, but 70 years ago, they stopped using those. So
yeah, back in 1960, I believe it was. But man, you wouldn't believe, I go to all these rallies, and 99% of the people go, "Man, I thought it was weight."
Yeah.
You know, and
it's just something I've never looked into. I'm sure other people haven't either.
Yeah, and I've actually seen guys out there jumping up and down on their bikes, thinking that they get that thing to, that sensor to move, and it's going to change the light. And I've had people come to the rallies. Me and my sister, we do the rallies, and a guy will go, "You mean me jumping up and down on my bike ain't going to work?" And so I look at my sister and go, "Oh, we got a jumper," and then I'll say, "Hey, man, good exercise, but you can stop doing that, because it ain't going to work." So
now, is this something that's always running when it's connected to the bike, or is it activated when the brakes turn on when you're coming to a stop?
Yep, it's brake activated. You can hook it up so it does continuously work. When you come up on the loop system and you put your brake on, we let people know that you should hold your brake for at least 10 seconds, because if you don't, the light will kick it out. So if you come up and you got your brake on and you start to activate it and you let your brake off and you just fold your hands like some guys do sitting at the light, it's not going to change. So if you hold that brake for about 10 seconds, let it know that something is there, and it'll start to change, and then you'll be good to go. So
okay. Is this product, you said you had a patent on it, are there any other like similar products that work differently? I've personally have never heard of a product like this, so is this one?
There's no other products out there like this. There is some guys now, I'm sure our audience, some people out there have tried putting magnets on their bikes. The problem with the lights is these lights run on a frequency of size of a keyboard, so a magnet will only change like 3% of them frequencies, and then the rest of the lights, you're just going to be sitting there. So magnets don't work. They just don't work. But the unit we've made, we've got 2 antennas, we got a computer board, and man, we've got it perfected, and there's not a light out there that we cannot change. I have been all over the United States testing, put many miles on the car, and we have this thing perfected. It's just a wonderful thing, and it's just something they should be putting on bikes when they build them. So I'm just hoping one day we can run into the right person and maybe go down that road.
Yeah, get that relationship started.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really hard to get people's attention. I don't care what kind of product you have and how good it is. It's really difficult to get something off the ground. So,
Jim, you also mentioned before the interview, I think it's worth noting, I forget where you were, if it was at a resort or something, but you were talking about golf carts and how this is a product that could work, on other vehicles outside of motorcycles.
Yes, when I went down to Florida doing my testing, I came up on a mobile home community, and it was on both sides of the state road, and there's a light, and it's an inductive loop light, and there was like 8 golf carts sitting at that light trying to get it to change. And the first cart, this lady about 90 years old, gets off that cart, has to push that button and jump back on the cart to get the light to change. So I stopped them all, talked to them about what we had. We actually hooked one up on one of the golf carts, and they have not had another problem since. So with the golf carts, we hook it so when they turn the key on, this thing just runs all the time that the key's on. And like I said, you can do it with the bikes too. It's a very minimum power draw. I actually can put a 9-volt battery on this and change lights, and we ran this thing for 36 hours on a 9-volt battery.
Wow, okay.
So there's no draw whatsoever to it.
Perfect.
And then we have diodes built in, so if you reverse polarity, you can't blow this thing up. And it's if there's a power spike, we've actually got the device hooked built into this, so it will kick that power spike out if your bike happens to get a spike or something to it, power voltage spike, so you don't have to worry about blowing it up.
Okay, awesome. Jim, is there anything else with the product, your company, or the industry you'd like to share with us before we end here today?
Yeah, no, this is just something my dad, he worked for the traffic department back in the 60s, and he realized it was a problem back then, and he started working on it. He perfected it in in the early 90s, and he finally started getting the attention of Harley. And then my dad passed away in his sleep. We were still young, me and my sisters were still pretty young, so nobody knew what to do with it, and it just kind of went away. But now that we've gotten older and there's people out there calling us for it still, we all put our money together and made it even better than it was. Back in the day when my dad was doing it, their unit was a lot bigger. All the resistors and everything inside here were a lot bigger, so we downsized it and made it what it is today. So,
yeah, it's a really cool product, and again, it's something, everybody has that problem of getting stopped at lights for too long, but I'm sure few people actually have thought of a solution or have even looked up a solution. So it's great that you're working on something like this.
Yeah. So yeah, it's wonderful, and now people know that it is not weight that runs these traffic lights. It's an inductive loop magnetic field. So.
Right. Well, Jim, thanks for coming in today.
Oh no, thank you.
We really appreciate it. It's been good to talk about it.
Wonderful.
Guys, make sure you're checking out Signalmatic. It's a really cool product. Perfect for the industry. Nobody wants to sit at a traffic light. Solution not a lot of people have looked into, so make sure you're checking that out. And make sure you're following Motorcycle and Power Sports News for more Power Players interviews and other great Power Sports content. Thanks for watching.